You have 3 seconds to get away from that scar. 1.
You really gonna shoot me?
2.
I'm not fucking moving. No!
What the fuck?
Look, we need to move. She's gone. Oh my god, she's gone. Come on. Those were your fucking people. You're my people.
June 29th, 2013. This was a night where I would have once told you I discovered a story that left an impact on me as a person that I wouldn't trade for anything else. Today, however, it's a night I contemplate revisiting, where I might tell myself what following these people will someday mean. My history essay due the next day was written, and I knew a good video was in order before I went to bed. A little video about a game I'd heard some things about here and there had just popped up, and I took my first fateful, woefully unprepared step into the world of The Last of Us. I don't remember what grade I got on my history essay the next day. I was nothing short of in another world. Out there was something new that I couldn't stop thinking about. Something that I loved. I saw the most visceral realization of what the end of the world bursting through your back door looks like, and helplessly got dragged through a world set on fire, as terrified as the little girl being forced to march through it. That instance, the resulting hours I spent taking her father across the country, and the precious moments I got to spend with another little girl, I used to know that no day would ever come where I didn't hold all of it so close to my heart that it hurt. Now it's a scar, a badly stitched mess that just bleeds whenever I let it back in. A near decade after that night, years into the aftermath of its last outing and on the cusp of a new telling, the conversation around this series, the place that we hold it in our hearts, has shifted. Rarely once allowed to rest since. The days have strangely come where I don't consider the story to be one piece of my heart anymore, but a burning feeling that overwhelms most of everything any time I try to reconcile with any of it. To get a little less emotional about all this, developer Naughty Dog dropped a series where the first part astounded by executing a vision the landscape of the industry at the time didn't cater to, and the philosophy of their sequel did nothing short of divide people. What they did with the story, I'm firmly in favour of, but the whole affair has left our ability to talk about the series calmly, decidedly muddied. We've not reached the point where you bringing up your opinion on The Last of Us is like, God forbid, saying you're a Sonic fan, but we all care just a little too much that defense, hate, or admittance of love comes with a baggage we just can't leave out of that conversation. How we got into this mess being a story that, despite my better judgment, I find too compelling to leave alone. Just before the narrative around all of this changes once more, I'm ready to try and put it all to bed, give my last take on the matter, use writing as an exercise to try and stop the bleeding for good. Maybe try and understand myself just how this series has left me, with an open wound. I wonder about Naughty Dog sometimes. I think a lot about the developers that I care about, but I quite admire the reputation that they've created for themselves. It's not an admittedly absolutely positive one, but I still sometimes stand in awe of a creative environment where in decades you can go from this to that, and remain that exciting a voice. Where industry icons can be born from two guys being so sure about an idea that they just couldn't quite fit into Uncharted. That idea that I so often wonder where we'd be if the studio hadn't said yes to. The gamble of building a relationship in real time through gameplay being a breed of idea that I value anyone in the industry still daring enough to consider. I wonder at the choice to place everything onto the shoulders of a crazy man and a little girl, and their journey that started September 26th, 2013. A night where Sarah gets the world she knows torn away from her by a viral infection born from a terrifying fungus. A night where her dad, Joel, gets his world torn away from him when Sarah doesn't make it. 20 years pass until he meets another little girl who might just be the answer to all of this. A rare immunity to this infection exists inside Ellie, the girl determined to make that mean something. You as Joel take her across America, let her in because you can't help it, kill the men who try to take her away from you when you can't accept what getting a cure will cost, and lie to her about it. 5 years pass, and the kind of rift forms between the two that a lie like that will make permanent. Joel gets taken away from us before enough of those choices can be forgiven by Ellie, by people that we don't know. The the player and Ellie united for a wicked hate. We live and die by the mission said years to us before we knew what it even meant. I'm gonna find, and I'm gonna kill every last one of them. You wage a war across Seattle, it becoming increasingly harder to still be Ellie as the bad things happen, but still willingly bringing the hammer down on the people that wronged us. All until you're asked to be Abby again, the one who brought the hammer down on Joel. Just as Naughty Dog asked you to once be open to letting someone in again, they're now heartbreakingly asking you to forgive someone before she and Ellie decide how this is going to end. To lay out the baggage of the trap that Naughty Dog laid for us in part 2 and really talk about Abby, we need to understand what it was that sparked such a love for this world, and why seeing any of it eventually be burned would hurt so much. To be clear, I'm not going to hold this game I've played so many times above criticism. The hits of the narrative were undeniably hard, but could not be called equal to the devastation wrought by some of its predecessors, or even its contemporaries. The trail it blazed in the AAA space has made it so that really boringly, only exclusives that feel just like it can now really succeed. The game is not immune to having others done more interesting things at the time, and since. Resident Evil Village has got the tall vampire queen that is nowhere to be found in The Last of Us, the relationship that the story of The Last of Us is built on having actually already been done by Telltale Games in their Walking Dead game just a year prior, with actually more interesting choices attached. All the same, however, there's a difference and a determination in the direction itself that I just let overshadow everything. Competition to the concept for the game they were offering was inevitable in this medium because we had fundamentally seen the biggest pieces of it done elsewhere before. You can recognise an admittance from Neil Druckmann, Bruce Straley, and Naughty Dog as a whole that they were not going to be the first or the last to make this kind of game. But their drive to still try and set the world on fire is never deterred by that fact, the fire that they started with their definitive take on the genre still yet to be extinguished. With Western depictions of wastelands smothered under thick layers of browns and greys, the America of The Last of Us feels decidedly more Eastern in the approach to its construction. They went ride or die with the Mother Nature reclaims the Earth aesthetic that traditionally Ghibli and Zelda had championed, and capitalise on painting their world in shades of luscious greens, rich ambers, and thick whites. Where remnants of the world that came before can exist, they're given every possible stage to shine on, not all the paint having yet moulded into an uninteresting stain. Silent or spoken commentary on every inch of it is ready to be capitalised on, the oppressiveness it should communicate paired with a longing for what was, even in spite of something beautiful now blooming in its place. I refer not just to the obvious beauty though, but also the hideous beauty that sent the world straight here. The infected. The bestiary crafted by the cordyceps virus that Naughty Dog took a long time to make more than just zombies sits alongside some of the greats. This fictional extension of a real-world virus feels tangible. There's an intricacy to the ecosystem, the depth of its hold on a victim, its design within environments, the various forms that each fan will have their own favourites of. Enough lore exists around them that honestly you could teach a theoretical class on them. The iconography around them making it immediately recognisable if a creature has stemmed from this infection over the more nebulous C, T, or G virus. These are all discoveries as well that you're free to make through gameplay too. Information gets split between the blistering encounters with a horde or the quieter moments where you'll stumble into a room and there's just like 5 of them waiting for you quietly. Both types of encounter offering fear-inducing indicators of their presence, and unique methods for dispatching the monsters, as memorable as those found in the likes of Resident Evil or Dead Space. Amazingly though, where we could label The Last of Us as an achievement in world building or simulating an experience, all trademarks of the studio, instead Naughty Dog's actual crowning achievement is the engrossing character work. Something they'd also done frequently well before, but that in this telling just had a tad more succinct a soul. Trying to accurately put into words what these two mean to so many of us is challenging because we can't help but dive into that complicated territory of, I would just go to hell and back with or for them. If by some miracle you haven't found yourself bonded to Joel after those fateful first few minutes, then I just don't think you're ever gonna get it, because giving him permission after that felt like the least I could do for him. The most devastating thing about getting to control any of these free playable characters is that it would only finally come in the midst or the aftermath of the worst possible thing that could have happened to them. I will gladly watch this twisted shell of a man, leaving a bloody stain in his wake because I wish I didn't have to watch him stuck carrying the weight. This man wasn't born a killer, a survivor even. He was forcibly made one. And yeah, what Tess said to him, it just sums up exactly what you're supposed to feel for this character. I get it. Put me in the shoes of Joel and I'm gonna walk until my feet bleed and then just keep on walking because of that difference to the norm. Naughty Dog chose to make Joel something that's rarely played with. Rather than had just so successfully worked for them craft a hero who mirrors the appeal of an existing icon, rather than give us the wronged man, the vengeful man, they leave us with the man who's lost his way. Joel has got very few lines left to cross, and whilst I do miss the combat feel of Uncharted, there was a fury present to the combat in The Last of Us that meant it played like nothing else at the time. He's closed off that primal part of himself, and that's reflected in how you take your enemies apart. The hits take you off your feet, and when you decimate these people, a lot of it is done with your damn hands. There's a heaviness to a lot of it that just couldn't be simpler, that yes, doesn't evolve very much, but never falters in conveying that frantic, sometimes desperate anger of this man when someone gets between him and his little girl. Despite all that as well, we admittedly don't really need who Joel is. I enjoy the little surface details that make him who he is as a person, but it doesn't detract from the fact that he could just as easily have been Tess or Marlene. The key to that character is just existing as a vehicle through which we can absorb or unleash that aggression. I love Joel, I care about Joel, but even I have to ask if that's just because when I was ready, he gave me permission to be as selfish as I had enabled him to be on this journey. All at a time where we became equal in our conviction to gun down anyone who tried to take away his baby girl. Damn, we were all sure as hell waiting for a character like Ellie. Cool as hell women characters had existed before Ellie, but she helped cultivate a spotlight for characters like her to get bigger stages than ever before. Some of you guys out there can call it an agenda from Naughty Dog if you feel the need, but I am thoroughly in favour of a queer, foul-mouthed, musical, capable, human, gonna swing that pipe at you even if I miss any way character being plastered over box art like she has been. Naughty Dog always held faith in what could be achieved if the players did connect with her, and it paid off. Sony never really had a bankable mascot, Crash Bandicoot maybe for a while, or Kratos perhaps, but finally getting one they could be proud to represent gaming. With Ellie. I related to her, obviously, but unfortunately there's only so much I can really say about why she works for representation. I'm just another bloke who can only really give guesses because I never was her. You're far better served to hear from someone who actually at some point in their lives was a 14 or a 19-year-old girl about just how well they nailed it with Ellie. I can, however, recognise the genius that went into getting myself, as well as Joel, to eventually let her in, even after having already been burned for that. Naughty Dog came out of nowhere with a defining example of quality partner AI at a time when we were moving towards perfecting the concept. Neil Druckmann's work on the narrative and Ashley Johnson's performance are immaculate in their ability to say, hey, give a crap about this girl. But just as carefully behind the scenes, work has gone into her character AI to make the game say, hey, maybe get to know her as well. She's gonna throw you the occasional box of ammo and come stab a bitch if you're ever in a pinch, sure, but there is honestly a far more interesting dimensionality to her to spot in different instances. It isn't solely limited to her following and aiding. Take her somewhere interesting and she'll give her thoughts on it. Spot a remnant of the old world and you can try and convince her what it was once upon a time. Complete a task with her and there's a chance at a high five to be had. And if you spend too long looking around, there's a glorious pun book she can pull out that's just a godsend for lightening the mood.
Why did the Scarecrow get a promotion?
Alright.
Because he was outstanding in his field.
That'll do.
Where in generations prior, these would have been pacing killing interactions that you just couldn't skip. Each of these ones today are invitingly optional. If you're not ready to get to know her or not interested in it at all, then just walk on past her. This relationship builds as successfully as it does. The transition from strangers to bonded feels as natural as it can, because pressure doesn't come attached. The game's narrative has forced you into this position, but the design only goes as far as to encourage the player to interact in the delight, or sometimes even the drama of just getting to know her. The Last of Us treated audiences to a relationship that was utterly intoxicating. It took two characters who were the antithesis of one another, and sent them off on an odyssey across America to see if that dynamic could be reversed. It pulled no punches when it came to the moves made to force change onto these people, but we pressed on with it anyway. Because if she wasn't awakening something in him, then she sure as hell wasn't us. However, making a story about one broken man and his two little girls managed to beautifully rhyme alongside the harshly executed, devastating lie from Joel, meant that an inevitable return for these characters became a foregone conclusion. Even if we knew that that pill was going to hurt to have to swallow, we just couldn't go on without them. Before I can even dare discussing part 2, I unfortunately need to be very clear on some things. The discourse around this game does not interest me. You are about to hear some negativity from me about this game, but I am no means in the camp of that damn cult who's just got a hard-on for hating the game. There's frankly a hell of a lot here that I really love. From trailer 1, there was an indescribable vibe to this game. It inspired a hesitancy. It was one that few of us actually acted on, but it still made it clear that if this story was to come back, it would not be on the terms we were expecting. I truly respect that Naughty Dog took an experience that people needed to be one specific thing and just refused to give closure. Joel's exit by force is executed in a fashion that did little less than wreck me. I waited 5 years to see Joel and Ellie in a room together again, and this is how it plays out. There's a reality where Naughty Dog just used solely that hate that they inspired, but a refusal to settle on just that offers a story that's got a far larger scope and a complexity that, to me, is far better than any alternative I could have wished for. What Neil Druckmann and his team sacrificed to try and talk about trauma, with the eyes that they had on them, makes a return to this story feel at the very least meaningful. If there had to be more to this story, then I'm so glad that it's at least dedicated to trying to do something different. It doesn't betray characters, it doesn't feel unnecessary, it's the same offering we got in 2013. Naughty Dog is again, not completely successfully, asking as best as they can just to get to know these people, to try and understand their perspectives, and doing their best to tell this story in a fashion that suggests rather than explicitly tells. It's a storytelling style that screams, 2 + 2 could be 4, but you tell me. Also, in 2020, with the world being where it was, I am truly thankful to Naughty Dog for trying to make a game that celebrates voices. Besides the studio's tireless dedication to making their games accessible, I'm still amazed that they took the time to say, hey, Jewish people are really damn cool, that so much of the cast are queer characters, that a trans narrative gets to be part of the mix, that a woman gets the chance to look like this. I like this lot, so you can bet I was a fan of those muscles. Naughty Dog was very aware of all the stinky negativity they were going to get for doing something like this, but they still never catered to the most boring voices on the internet. Those traits and decisions make the game one that I'm honestly proud to have played, but like with any meaningful work of art, distance from it does highlight cracks in the relationship that I need to address. The gameplay itself is just kinda boring. It only strives to improve the fluidity of the combat. It's never bad, but it's crushingly clear that with AAA games, we've generally gone backwards. We're catching up to games that used to play like this not all that long ago, trying to bake mechanics back into these experiences that never should have left. Certain fans out there being experts on if the games that actually try something different are good despite never having actually played Death Stranding. Yeah, fuck you. Yeah, I really liked that anger, that ferocity in 2013, but that was at a time where it was just one idea, not the norm today. Gameplay and story in this series used to be connected by my interest and enjoyment of them. The DLC for the first game, Left Behind, felt revolutionary to me, with what Naughty Dog was able to say through one about the other. But nowadays, their little version of an open world in the first act feels inferior to, honestly, even something like Shenmue. You take a long enough look at that world as well, and you can recognise a technical standard that's been achieved that is second to none. So much of this exists and functions to the quality that it does, and I just can't imagine being in the same ballpark creatively as the people that made it. But I also won't argue with someone who would call this a monument to too much. The debate itself is a little more nuanced than this comes across as a rush to see if it all can be done, rather than a measured need to do so. But when an output can be delivered like this under the circumstances that it was, you're maybe not, as a studio, sending the best messages to the rest of the industry on expected standards. In Part 2 as well, I no longer feel that the technical standard is matched by Naughty Dog's typical narrative standard either. The pacing honestly cripples a good chunk of the game, and whilst this is a mature game that needs to contain mature imagery, certain ideas are just plain ugly. I should feel uncomfortable, but that's being caused by the wrong things. The lynching imagery does not sit well with me. The constant dead naming, turning people of colour into just fodder for violence. I just don't think people should have to be subjected to some of it. I'm going to make it very clear on this channel that I am not the arbiter of acceptability when it comes to elements like this. I'm not saying they can't exist. I've just seen in their prior efforts that Naughty Dog is a studio capable of crafting very considered works of art, and that if this story had to include these elements, then it would have been better served spending some more time on the drawing board. All of those things I'm able to find little ways to push to the back of my mind, but unfortunately I don't think I'll ever be able to get over how Naughty Dog just put me at odds with the heart of the experience. With Ellie. It was just too painful a stretch to watch someone that I only wanted the best for be reduced, not unlike Joel, to just a single instinct. Violence. Making the world hurt as much as you can to try and stop the hurt that you feel. The brilliance and the tragedy of the hate that Naughty Dog sparks in your very soul when they take Joel away is that you condone that seething need to get away from the pain. But only when it's too late do you wish that that anger had only been coming from you, not from her. You take for granted those moments of lights where you and her get to remember who she is, not really valuing the very few of them we're getting. The agony becomes watching people that you once knew how you felt about become the ones that now you'd pull a gun on yourself. It hurts, but by the time we got to that ending, I'd lost her. She put a knife to Lev's neck, and I knew she was gone. An achievement in character work like that shouldn't detract from the merits of the game, but it left the act of participating in this story an exhausting one. Arduous is how I dubbed the experience. The exercise in pure pain not exactly compelling me to return to the hurt that it's left me with. Naughty Dog even perhaps know themselves now that The Last of Us Part 2 needs to be a swan song for this breed of linear experience that they've built a legacy around. If for no other reason than in that integral moment, their test in forgiveness just runs out of steam. Just like they did once before when they forced you to march through that hospital to hurt the people that were going to take away Ellie. Naughty Dog stretched a primal emotion until for some of us, it broke completely. Some of us just simply reached the point of forgiveness maybe quicker than they were expecting. When Ellie held a knife to this little boy's throat and I knew I no longer needed to participate, when I knew I'd let the hate go even if she couldn't, I was still made to swing that knife. I was still made to move forward and make it worse. A game forcing me to participate, to act, to not provide an easy escape that other mediums might, speaks lengths to the achievements that only gaming can create, but leaves that closing act redundant. Ellie's trauma is something I don't get to be the author of, but don't you dare ask me to be the one who prolongs it. Her pinning Abby down in the water left a taste in my mouth that isn't sour or vile, but is one that I just can't shake, that I can't defend. That should be where I close the book, where I admit that I fundamentally believe you can't build on the power of that original story. Strangely though, someone else made that hate mean something, and warranted a similar feeling about following up this story. Abby putting her coat around Lev's shoulders, meaning honestly as much to me as watching Joel hold either of his two little girls. Ellie may well be the mascot that Sony deserved, but Abby might just be the character the medium can cite whenever it has to return to the fight to prove that it's art. Her story is the kind that I made this channel to discuss, the journey to forgiveness that Naughty Dog sent me on being the kind of art that I want life to imitate, the art that I need the world to know about. The initial hate that I had for her that Naughty Dog had made as rich as a fine wine was something I found myself needing to let go of, maybe just to relieve myself. Maybe just to connect with someone who I assumed had now gotten over their trauma. Then I saw what Abby was. I saw the muscles, I noticed the nightmares, I made violence be second nature to her, and I sat uneasy as even her friends, the people that she loves, feel scared of her. She was nothing short of a monument to execution, bringing the club down on Joel because that's all she had left. I forgave her. Good God, I forgave her. How could I hold anything against the person that I, by association, was responsible for making this deeply flawed? It left me open to help her try and do any good for Yara and Lev, to enable the three of them to help each other find a way back, to find light long after I assumed it had been snuffed out. I didn't complain that I wasn't getting her motivations spelled out. I would have followed blindly. We don't get to know why she does for this brother and sister what she does because I get the idea that she doesn't even know herself. This just being what she needs to do right now that the only two things she was certain about are gone. Just letting that be enough gave me a different kind of closure. It wasn't Joel, but Abby. Abby opened back up that primal part of herself. She letting Lev lead her across that bridge, letting her walls down with Owen, trying to put Mel before herself and having that all amount to nothing. She being ready to relapse into that person that she was, but letting it go because Lev asked. She putting her coat around his shoulders, she saying to him,
Hey, you're my people.
Those were the words that I needed. Even amongst all the pain, I value the experience ingraining in me the desire to do better. It told me that I can see a million things. Fly through the stars, be together with friends, bust some ghosts, catch them all, change a person, no fear, make a sacrifice, not leave well enough alone, still hold out hope, discover who I am. There will always be one thing that I come back for, and that's love. Naughty Dog made damn sure I'd remember that when he lost her, and then again when she found him. The making of this video hasn't magically sealed the wound. A fresher, deeper cut has only been made in re-experiencing all of this, in truly putting to words how I feel about it all. The struggle of getting myself through its cold, bloody march hasn't gotten easier, the value of the light to be found hasn't been lessened. It's confliction that I'm just gonna have to carry with me. I don't love The Last of Us, I don't hate it either. I just know that I need some time on my own to someday come to terms with it all. If I ever even can. This series is an achievement. The new telling of it I'm sure will be good in itself, but still somehow reconciling with all of it isn't something I'm yet capable of. I'm always down for what I have with this story, with these characters, but I know any more of it just isn't going to do me any good. Naughty Dog can bring this journey to new people if they need to. Maybe someday we'll see Ellie or Abby again, but I just can't take another knife to the heart that I know will come with that. So I guess just leave me out of it. There's a triviality to all of this. I make a hell of a scene over people who don't exist, and violence that's simulated. I just know that it helps make the important stuff in my life more meaningful though. The goodbyes that I never got to say in real life, and my own hate that I carry. I've not been allowed to forget that they matter. When I've been lost in the darkness, I've been reminded to look for the light. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. I never dreamed I'd make a video on this series, but years later it has finally happened. This video took a long damn time, and it was all in aid of the new show starting today. I hope that you all really enjoy it. I'm very excited to see what direction they take it in. We'll be back soon with some, how should I put it, more positive stuff in the next video. Thank you so much for watching again, and take care of yourselves.